The moment I realized my family had erased me happened at my own 18th birthday party. I was standing in our backyard in Austin, surrounded by 100 people I barely knew. String lights everywhere. Music pumping. Champagne flowing. The works. Then the MC grabbed the microphone and shouted, "Let's give it up for Madeline turning 18. My sister's name. Not mine. We're twins. We were born on the same day. But apparently, only one of us was worth celebrating." I stood there with a glass in my hand, watching everyone cheer for her. Watching my mom beam with pride. Watching my dad lift his phone to take another picture of Madeline in her perfect white dress. The cake, 3 tiers, gold frosting, stunning, had only her name on it. Mine wasn't anywhere. Something inside me went completely still. Not angry. Not sad. Just clear. Like I'd finally stopped lying to myself about what I'd always known. I set my glass down. Nobody noticed. I walked away from the party, barefoot on the warm pavement. Nobody followed. That night became the last time my family ever saw me. They just didn't know it yet. Let me back up. I need to tell you how we got here. Growing up, my sister Madeline was the sun, and I was supposed to orbit around her. That's just how it was. She never had to ask for attention. It came to her automatically, like gravity. I was 8 the first time I really understood my role. Madeline had a cheer competition. Mom spent the entire morning on her hair, curling every piece perfectly, spraying glitter on her cheeks, pinning this massive bow that practically touched her shoulders. I stood in the doorway holding my own hairbrush, waiting. Nobody looked at me. Dad finally glanced over and said, "Sweetie, be helpful," then handed me Madeline's water bottle to carry. So I did. And that became the pattern. She shined. I helped her shine. By middle school, it was automatic. Madeline talked, I listened. She won awards, I clapped. She needed something, I got it. At family dinners, relatives would pull her into conversations about her future, her talent, her potential. When they turned to me, the questions were different. Softer. Thinner. How's school? Still drawing. Then they'd drift back to her like I'd only filled a pause in the real conversation. I started keeping a mental tally around age 13. Not because I wanted to be petty, but because I needed to know if I was imagining it. How many times Dad asked about Madeline's day versus mine? How many photos Mom took of each of us? How many times someone said, "Proud of you," and who they were looking at when they said it? The numbers didn't lie. For every one time they engaged with me, there were at least 10 for her. Sometimes more. I told myself it didn't matter. That I was being oversensitive. That good daughters don't keep score. But the body keeps score even when you try not to. There's one moment that never left me. I was 15. I'd spent weeks making Madeline a birthday present, a handmade scrapbook filled with sketches, watercolor borders, photos. I worked on it every night under my desk lamp. When I finally wrapped it in brown paper and tied it with twine, I felt proud. Quietly proud. She opened it in front of our parents. Flipped 2 pages. Stopped. "It's cute," she said, smiling at the new tablet Mom had just handed her. "But I mean, Mom bought me something real this year." She set the scrapbook aside. The spine bent when it hit the table. Something inside me bent too. I waited for someone to say something. To tell her that was rude. To acknowledge the work I'd put in. Nothing. Mom just smiled and said, "Madeline, show Maren how the camera works on your new tablet." Like I was supposed to be excited about the gift that had just replaced mine. That night, I tore out 1 page from the scrapbook, a sketch of a room I'd imagined designing one day. Tall windows, soft light, a chair facing the sunrise. I kept that page. The rest went into the back of my closet. It's still there, probably. I don't know. I haven't been back. As we got older, the imbalance got sharper instead of fading. Madeline got a car at 16. I helped her pick the paint color. She had friends over constantly. I brought them snacks. When relatives visited, they asked about her prom dress, her college plans, her everything. My plans were polite afterthoughts. I remember my aunt visiting one Christmas. She walked in with shopping bags and handed Madeline this beautiful necklace. Real silver. Then she turned to me and handed me a $5 Starbucks gift card. I know you like coffee, she said, like that made it equal. Madeline's necklace probably cost $200. I smiled and said thank you because that's what I'd learned to do. Smile. Say thank you. Don't make it awkward. Mom used to tell people I was independent, that I didn't need much attention. It sounded like praise until I realized what it actually meant, permission. Permission to overlook me so they could save their energy for the child who demanded more. Dad told me once, "You're steady, Maren. Madeline's fragile. She needs us more." But fragility never stopped her from stepping on everything in her way. The worst part wasn't even the big moments. It was the small ones. The daily erosion of being second. Like when Mom would make Madeline's favorite dinner 3 nights a week, but the one time I asked for mine, she'd sigh and say, "Can't you just be flexible?" Or when Dad would drive across town to pick Madeline up from a friend's house at midnight, but tell me to find my own ride home from my art class because he was tired. Or the family photos where Madeline always stood in the center, and I was somehow always on the edge, half cropped out. Little things. Daily things. Things that individually seemed too small to complain about, but together built a wall between who I was and who I could have been. By 17, I'd learned to read our house like a map. The loud rooms belonged to them. The quiet ones were mine. I stopped asking for things. Rides, help, attention. Silence became easier. Predictable. Safe. And somewhere under all that quiet, a tiny part of me still waited. Waited for someone to look at me the way they looked at her. For a chance to be seen without having to earn it. I didn't realize how stupid that hope was until my 18th birthday. The party wasn't supposed to be just for Madeline. That's what made it worse. Mom had mentioned it was our birthday party when she first brought it up. But as planning started, I noticed things. The color scheme was Madeline's favorite. The guest list was all her friends. The photographer was someone she'd been following on Instagram. When I asked Mom about it that afternoon, she touched my arm and said, "Don't make this difficult. You know how Madeline gets." Yeah. I knew how Madeline got. She got everything. I should have left then. But I didn't. I helped set up the tables. Arranged the candles. Made everything look perfect. That's what I did. I made things perfect for everyone else. When the MC made the announcement, celebrating Madeline's 18th again, I felt my mom's hand on my arm. "Don't step up," she whispered. "It'll confuse people." Confuse people. At my own birthday. I looked at my dad. He was clapping too loud, the way people clap when they're pretending nothing's wrong. Madeline made a wish. Cameras flashed. People chanted her name. Someone next to me said, "She looks amazing. This is so her night." And that's when I understood. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. They'd made a choice. And I wasn't it. My throat felt tight, but my breathing stayed steady. I did what I always did. Stayed quiet, stayed contained, stayed unseen. I lifted my glass halfway, like I was joining the toast. Then I set it down before it reached my lips. Nobody noticed. A piece of wax dripped from one of the candles I'd lit earlier. I watched it harden on the tablecloth, pale and final. Then I turned and walked away. Past the laughter. Past the music. Past the house that had never really been mine. I didn't run. I just kept walking until the sound faded into nothing. When the bus pulled up on the main road, its headlights cut through the dark like an invitation. I stepped on, still barefoot, still in my dress. The driver looked at my feet, then back at the road. He didn't ask questions. The door hissed shut behind me. That sound felt like a line being drawn. I took a seat in the back. For the first time all night, there was nobody telling me to smile, to be quiet, to step aside. Just the hum of wheels on asphalt and the smell of old coffee. I pulled out my sketchbook, the one I'd carried for years. I found the page where I'd torn out that drawing when I was 15, the room with tall windows and soft light. The empty space stared back at me. An imprint of something I'd wanted but never believed I could have. I flipped to a blank page and started drawing. A new room. Same tall windows. Same light. But this time, I drew it like it was real. Like it was mine. The bus carried me north through the night. Each mile felt like shedding weight. Dad's silence, Mom's control, Madeline's shadow. Somewhere around hour 3, I realized I hadn't cried. Not once. I thought maybe I should. That's what people do when they leave home, right? They cry. But I didn't feel sad. I felt light. Like I'd been holding my breath for 18 years and finally let it out. By dawn, when the New York skyline appeared, something in me settled. Not peace. Not hope. Just resolve. Queens was all I could afford. A narrow room with peeling paint, a window facing a brick wall, a radiator that clanked whenever it felt like it. I paid the deposit with money I'd saved from a summer internship. $600 total. Everything I had. When the door closed behind me, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt open. I set my sketchbook on the windowsill. The space was small, but it was mine. The first week was the hardest. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, disoriented, reaching for my phone to check if anyone had messaged. No one had. Part of me wanted them to. Wanted my mom to call and say she'd made a mistake. That they'd looked for me. That they were sorry. But another part of me, the part that was growing stronger every day, knew that call would never come. And maybe that was okay. My days became a rhythm of survival. Opening shifts at a cafe, steaming milk, wiping tables till my hands ached, learning people's orders by heart. Night classes on my laptop, notes scribbled until the margins disappeared. Building digital models between traffic sounds and thin walls. The cafe became my anchor. My manager, Gloria, was this no-nonsense woman in her 50s who ran the place like a ship. She didn't ask about my life. Didn't pry. Just showed me what to do and let me work. One morning, about 2 weeks in, I messed up an order. Got the milk wrong, made it too hot, had to remake it. I apologized 3 times. Gloria just looked at me and said, "Kid, you're allowed to make mistakes. That's how you learn." It was such a small thing. But nobody had ever said that to me before. In my house, mistakes meant disappointing people. Meant being less than Madeline. I didn't talk much to the other staff. I didn't need to. People in the city barely looked at each other anyway. That anonymity was a gift. One morning while wiping down the counter, an older woman approached. She pointed to a napkin where I'd unconsciously sketched the corner of the cafe. "You drew this?" she asked. I nodded. She studied it for a long moment. "You see the room. Most people only see objects." Her name was Valentina Grant. She was known in certain circles for turning abandoned warehouses into homes with soul. She handed me her card. "Come by the studio. I might have a space for you." It wasn't a promise. It was an opening. At her studio, a converted warehouse with brick walls and skylights, Valentina looked through my sketches. Her finger paused on the drawing from the bus. "The room with the windows. You build from absence," she said quietly. I didn't ask what that meant. I understood. The internship she offered paid almost nothing, but it gave me access. Tools, materials, empty rooms waiting to be redesigned. I swept floors. Labeled samples. Learned how light behaves against stone, how texture can soften wounds you don't name out loud. My routine shifted again. Studio by day, cafe by night, sketchbook always in my bag. Valentina rarely praised anyone, but when she did, it landed like an anchor. You work like someone who's had to earn every inch. You understand quiet. You design with memory. I built furniture from reclaimed pieces. A table from old beams. A lamp from rusted copper. A chair that creaked like it remembered something. Every project became a way to rebuild myself in fragments. One night, after finishing a bookshelf made from salvaged wood, Valentina asked me, "What are you running from?" I looked up, surprised. "What?" "You work like you're being chased. Like if you stop, something will catch up." I didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, "Maybe I'm not running from something. Maybe I'm running towards something." She nodded. "Good. Just make sure you know what that something is." I thought about that a lot in the months that followed. What was I running toward? At first, I thought it was success. Proving them wrong. Showing my family I could make it without them. But the deeper I got into the work, the more I realized it wasn't about them at all. It was about building a life where I didn't have to shrink myself. Where my existence didn't depend on staying quiet. 3 years passed like that. grind and growth. I worked until my fingers bruised, until my eyes blurred at 2 in the morning, until the girl who left Austin barefoot felt like someone from another life. She was still inside me, but quieter now. Like an echo I'd learned to respect instead of obey. Then one evening, Valentina placed a stack of files on my desk. "Clients asked for you by name," she said. Just that. No smile. No ceremony. But I felt the shift. The first real breath of a life that wasn't borrowed or inherited, but built. That night in my tiny room, I made a spreadsheet. Expenses, savings, supplies, projected costs. A list titled "Steps to Independence." By morning, I had a plan. A real one. Maren Atelier would be mine. My studio. My space. My name. The bus had carried me away. My work would carry me forward. The morning my TED Talk went live, I didn't think anything would change. It had been a small event. A quiet auditorium. People who listened carefully and left without much fuss. I told a story without names. A girl whose 18th birthday was taken from her. Who walked out mid-party and chose silence as a boundary. I talked about what it means to be invisible in your own family. How you learn to make yourself smaller. How that smallness becomes a habit, then an identity, until you forget you were ever supposed to take up space. The organizer had asked me to speak because she'd seen my work. Said my designs felt like they were holding space for something unspoken. She was right. 2 days later, my inbox exploded. The video passed 1 million views before I even processed it. Messages poured in from people who'd lived similar stories. Adult children who'd been overlooked. Siblings who'd always been second. People who'd finally walked away from families that couldn't see them. One message stuck with me. A woman in her 40s wrote, "I've been the invisible daughter for my entire life. Watching your talk made me realize I'm allowed to stop waiting for them to notice me. Thank you for giving me permission to leave." I read that message 3 times. Permission to leave. Like we all needed someone else to tell us it was okay to choose ourselves. I didn't respond to most of it. I kept moving. Studio work, client calls, sketches. Routine kept the noise at a distance. Then the interview request started. Magazines wanted to talk about the girl rebuilding herself. Design blogs asked about my process. Podcasts asked about resilience. I kept my answers short. Let silence frame the rest. The first tremor came from Texas. A text from my mother, "We saw the video. Madeline is upset. Maybe you should check on her." No acknowledgement of the talk. No recognition of my work. No, "We're proud of you," or "We miss you." Just the same pull toward Madeline. I stared at that text for a long time. 3 years of silence, and this was what broke it. Not concern for me. Concern for her. I didn't answer. Later, my dad wrote, "Congratulations on your success. But please understand, your sister feels targeted. Targeted. By a story with no names." The thing is, I'd been careful. I never mentioned Austin. Never said twin. Never gave details that would identify anyone. But they knew. And instead of reflecting on why the story felt familiar, they made it about protecting Madeline's feelings. Some patterns never break. I set the phone aside and kept working. The next morning, my assistant Felix came running in with his tablet. "You need to see this." A gossip site had posted an interview with Madeline. Her face filled the screen, composed and practiced. The headline, "Sister of Viral Designer says, people don't know the real story." I didn't open it at first. When I finally did, the words were predictable. "She exaggerates for attention. We always treated her well. She left because she couldn't handle comparisons. I hope she's okay, but the internet doesn't know the truth." I didn't feel angry. Just confirmed. Some people collapse without being the center. By evening, the internet had started digging. Screenshots of Madeline's old posts that contradicted everything she'd said. Photos from that birthday party. All of her, none of me. Comment sections turned heavy and fast. People found my old classmates who confirmed the dynamic. Found relatives who'd witnessed it. The truth assembled itself without me having to say a word. Still, I stayed silent. Silence has weight. It tilts truth toward the surface. That night, I filed paperwork to expand Maren Atelier into a full studio. Signed the Manhattan lease. updated registrations, transferred funds. Each signature felt like a door closing. Not slamming. Just closure. A week later, the TED Talk hit 5 million views. A boutique hotel wanted me to design their lobby. A brand wanted collaboration. Clients wrote that my work made their spaces feel like breathing again. Meanwhile, Madeline's account spiraled. Comments disabled. Sponsorships paused. Her perfect content drowned under critiques from strangers who recognized patterns they'd lived themselves. Valentina stopped by one afternoon while I adjusted a lighting mock-up. "You don't have to explain anything," she said. "They're doing that work for you." I nodded, though something deep in my chest tightened. An old ache separating from its root. That night, my phone buzzed. An email from Madeline. I hovered, then opened it. One sentence. I didn't know it would hurt this much to be unseen. The words sat there like something fragile and unfinished. Not an apology. Not responsibility. Just the first honest thing she'd said in years. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond. To tell her that I'd felt that way for 18 years. That being unseen doesn't just hurt, it reshapes you. It teaches you that your worth is conditional. That love is something you have to earn. But I didn't write back. Some endings aren't meant to be softened. By week's end, Maren Atelier opened its doors. Clients filtered in under tall windows. Journalists took notes quietly. Light moved across the polished floor like something settling into place. I walked through the space, my space, with the steadiness of someone who rebuilt herself without approval. The opening night was small. Intentional. About 40 people, mostly other designers, a few journalists, some clients. Valentina stood near the back, watching me move through the room. A reporter asked me what inspired my work. Absence, I said. I design for the spaces people forget to fill. She wrote that down, but I don't think she understood. Justice didn't arrive loudly. It stitched itself through consequences, through silence, through systems correcting themselves. When the noise finally settled, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like air. Clean, unclaimed, filling every corner. Most nights now, I stay late at the studio. The city pulses outside in soft intervals, distant sirens, wind past the windows, trains rumbling underground. All of it blending into a rhythm that doesn't ask anything of me. There's an olive tree in the center of my loft now. Its leaves brush the skylight, catching evening light. 3 years ago, I could barely keep a plant alive in that dark queen's room. Now this one grows taller than I can reach. I water it every Sunday. Watch the leaves turn toward the light. It's become a ritual, this small act of care. Sometimes I sit on the floor with my back against the brick wall, sketchbook open. The pencil moves softly. Lines becoming corners, corners becoming rooms. No deadlines. No expectations. Just space becoming shape. I think about Austin less and less. Not out of bitterness. Out of distance. That house that once felt like the entire world now exists like an outline, recognizable but empty. There were no more calls from my parents after Madeline's email. No questions. No justifications. Their silence used to feel like erasure. Now it feels like room to breathe. One evening, I finished setting up the final piece for my exhibition. A cube of glass, glowing softly from within. Inside, just a chair and a white wall. Not meant to impress. Meant to feel like the first clean moment after a storm. I turned off the gallery lights until only that cube remained, gold spilling across the concrete floor. A young woman stood in front of it for almost 20 minutes. When she finally turned to leave, her eyes were wet. "Thank you," she said quietly. I nodded. I understood. Walking back to my loft later, I noticed how the city lights flickered across my window, merging with the reflection of my living space. My home, built from nothing but years of quiet rebuilding. I exhaled slowly. For the first time in my life, I didn't wonder who might be watching. I was enough company on my own. Some people rebuild their lives by shouting their pain into the world. I rebuilt mine by turning the lights on in a room no one ever thought I'd own. Silence didn't break me. It shaped the walls, the floor, the doorway I finally walked through without fear. Standing here now, looking at the city breathing below my windows, I understand something simple. You don't have to go back to the place that erased you to prove you exist. You can just build forward. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about finding yourself when the world tries to make you invisible. Sometimes the best revenge is becoming the person they never believed you could be.